Well, a vote at Queen's Park today is on some contentious legislation that would give the education minister more power to take control of school boards. So that's coming today. The Supporting Children and Students Act would allow for Education Minister Paul Calandra to intervene at any of Ontario's school boards, particularly around expenses and matters the government deems of public interest. Minister Calandra defended that at Queen's Park yesterday, but this morning he's live here on CP24 Breakfast for more on the reasoning behind the bill. Minister Calandra, good to talk to you again about this. There are critics, as you well know, that say, you fast-track this bill, there's no debate on it, it's not going to go to committee, telling people or suggesting that you don't want to be speaking to critics or hearing from people criticizing this bill. How do you respond to that criticism?
Look, Nick, the bill's actually been on the order paper since last May. I don't think anybody can suggest that I've been trying to hide from the purpose of the bill, frankly. My two parliamentary assistants have crisscrossed the province, taking direct consultations with respect to the return of the school resource officer in our schools. The Minister of Justice's parliamentary assistant has also crisscrossed the province. I've met with dozens of school trustee associations, dozens of trustees. I've met with directors of education, hundreds of meetings with parents, and the reality is once I received that report on a school board called the Near North School Board and the absolute chaotic dysfunction of that board, I knew that I had to get this bill passed as soon as possible so that I could step in boards like that one and others that are really putting students and teachers at the center of warfare within a board where trustees just can't get along. And you had to get it passed, and that's what we're doing.
So clearly, I hear the issue you're talking about there with trustees, but in terms of learning in the classroom for students, how is this bill going to help students better learn, better understand the curriculum?
Yeah, this is just a step. This really is about the ministry being able to assume responsibility for school boards that have really gone off the rails. It is very difficult for the Minister of Education right now to take over a school board, and almost virtually impossible in a situation where a school board is in a surplus situation. Now, what this bill allows me to do is when there is a clear conflict within a school board that is hurting students, parents, and teachers, the minister can step in much quicker. And I just draw people's attention to the Near North School Board, which is Parry Sound, North Bay. You have kids learning in a half-demolished high school because of the failure of the school board, the failure of the trustees. That hurts and impacts students. And under legislation the way it is right now, it is very difficult for me to step in and fix that. With Bill 33, it allows me to step in much quicker. What the opposition is suggesting is that I let a board fall apart and collapse before I can move and step in. And I'm just not willing to do that anymore. We've done that for 50 years, and that's got to stop. And Bill 33 allows me to make sure it stops.
Minister, when we last spoke, I asked you about the future or fate of, trustees in the province. You were sitting on the couch with me. You said you hadn't made a decision at that time, but it was coming later in the year. Does this bill mean anything for the fate of trustees? Are they effectively going to be eliminated? What does this mean?
No, this bill really isn't about trustees at all, frankly. This bill really is about school boards when they run into difficulties, when they start falling apart, and when they're not able to manage their affairs in the best interests of students and teachers, frankly. It just allows the ministry to assume responsibility for boards that have gone really off the rails. And it allows us to step in and assume that responsibility sooner. With respect to trustees and the governance model of trustees, I'm still doing the work with respect to the governance model going ahead, but I still am in a position where I want to, by the end of the year, give a bit more clarity to what our decision is. But Bill 33 essentially is not about trustees at all. It's about board governance.
So more to come on that. So on that board governance piece then, Minister, does that mean that this would be permanently that the Ministry of Education will be taking over, or is there a time frame to restructure, repair, go back and look at things? How long would the minister be in charge?
Yeah, we obviously appoint a supervisor who assumes responsibility for boards when they have completely fallen apart, like as in the instance of the 5 boards that we have responsibility over right now. The goal is to get in there, put them back on track, put them back in if they're in a deficit position, put them back into a surplus position with long-term sustainability. If it's boards that are already in a surplus, but the governance model has just fallen apart because trustees can't get along, it is to bring back stability, make sure the resources are going back into the classroom. The goal isn't for the ministry to run boards forever. It is just to put them back on track and be able to do it soon. You shouldn't have to wait 2 or 3 years for a school board to get put back on track. Under the current system, that's really, frankly, what happens. And I don't think that's in the best interest of anybody.
Okay, we're going to have to leave this conversation there, but I feel like we've got at least one more coming before the end of the year. Education Minister Paul Calandra, appreciate the time this morning. Thank you.